One of the core concepts that yogis have delved into, understood, recognized as key is that of swatantrya, which means freedom. The consciousness that is the self is inherently free. But if you forget the self, you lose your freedom. If you falsely identify the self that is pure, eternal, infinite, boundless consciousness with matter, with the illusion of being within time, within space, within the constraints of cause and effect, and of the psychological structure of the ego, then you have given away your freedom. And so the first thing that a yogi must do is reclaim their freedom. It is inalienable. It cannot be taken away by anyone else, but you can take it away from yourself. You have the freedom to give away your freedom. And because the collective consciousness has given away its freedom, that same loss of freedom appears in the macrocosm as a loss of freedom for the human species. If we are to regain the freedom that everyone is complaining about having lost in the external world, we can only do that after we have gained our freedom internally. But if one is in the illusion that one is a body and that one's consciousness is tied to or even generated by the brain, then one has lost one's independence. And if one is within a psychological structure that produces thoughts that are based on the frame of reference of body consciousness, then one will have no control over one's mind or one's emotions or one's ability to understand what is really happening because of the imaginary nature of the ego's projections that do not allow the consciousness to understand its own nature or the nature of the world that it perceives. And when there is a lack of knowledge, there is a lack of power. So if we want our freedom, we must regain accurate knowledge of the situation that we are in. And if we do not understand that that situation is our own projection, then we will be fighting with shadows. We will be fighting against the wrong enemy because we will project that enemy as an other. And we will lose sight of the fact that it is our own consciousness that has created that other, brought it into manifestation through our own projection of aspects of our own consciousness that have chosen not to be free. So there must be a very deep understanding of who you are and what you are, and a refusal to be captured by the illusions created by the ego's thoughts and its affects, its desires, and its fears. Until you know that you are deathless consciousness, uncreated, unborn, and unending, you cannot be free of fear. And that fear will always be compensated by desire, by attachment, by the seeking of security on an external level. But where is the internal security? If you seek it on the external level, you pay a price of losing your independence. In the same way that humans have lost their independence politically by losing their ground, literally, by not raising their own food, by not remaining independent thinkers, by not remaining independent in relation to any external force, by giving up our sovereignty internally through the weakness of the ego, we have lost our sovereignty externally. So the spiritual revolution that must ensue now is a revolution that begins by reclaiming our freedom, our independence of conditions, so that the power of the intelligence of the real self is not limited to that subset that fits into the ego mind, but is able to access the infinite intelligence and information that is not separate from us. Once you understand that the self is universal, not particular, not separate, not limited to the body, but the infinite field of consciousness in which the entire cosmos is contained, that has no boundaries, no differentiations, and that is made of pure light. And when you understand how to modulate your own vibrational frequency to attune to that light, then you realize your power to redream the dream, and no longer to be a victim of the dream, no longer to be trapped in a world not of your own making, but to realize who is the maker, the creator, the designer, the sustainer, and the destroyer of worlds. To know that supreme being as yourself is the only freedom. But you can only know that when you have let go of all the lower forms of selfhood, of all of those forms of petty selfhood that have trapped themselves in dependence to others and in codependent relationships and in collusions based on weakness, compensated by desire for power and control, that cannot be gained or cannot be kept because of the inaccurate understanding of who you are, in which you are always in a state of lack. And that lack causes the enslavement to that which you have projected as other than yourself. Realize your freedom. Freedom from the body, from the need to even have a body, to know that you are not the body, that your existence preceded that of the body, and will extend beyond the death of the body, and understand the true environment that the self inhabits, not the mere material environment of the organism. Understand the nature of the self's extent that transcends the limits of time and space. And by realizing that power that is completely free, you can bring that power into the phenomenal plane, because the world is only its reflection. And once you awaken to that fact, then this reflected dream will no longer create disturbance, confusion, incoherence, but will be recognized as a puzzle that you have been meant to solve, and that the missing piece was your own self-realization. And once that is achieved, you will understand the unity of the entire field of being, in which there will no longer be conflicts and no longer be any sense of inadequacy or incompleteness, and no longer be any demonic or negative forces that resist the presence of truth, of love, of goodness, of beauty, of joy, and of all that makes this world worth being in. But that power to make the world again a place of goodness requires you to have gained the supreme power of a goodness that cannot be taken away, cannot be threatened. This self-sovereignty is an urgent necessity in which to establish your consciousness in a way that can never be lost or forgotten. To achieve that freedom, you must be free of your own mind controlling you. That mind must become dedicated now to open to the full intelligence of the self and follow the directives of the self. And the heart must be open to the love of the self. And once there is complete opening and a union of the individual with the supreme infinite self, then the entire field is unified as a single whole. And the perfection of the consciousness of the one self will again prevail in the macrocosm. Freedom requires presence, silence, and complete stillness, so that no agitation disturbs the field. May you gain that purity of consciousness that transforms the world through your unshakable peace.